Call to order a regular meeting of Warren City Council, Tuesday, January 10th at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
President Green.
Here.
Councilman Lafferty.
Here.
Councilman Watts.
Here.
Councilman Kabasinski.
Present.
Councilwoman Rogency.
Here.
Councilman Papandrea.
Here.
Councilwoman Moore is present. You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item is for adoption of the consent agenda. So moved.
Support with discussion.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion. Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair to Madam Secretary, I'd like to remove item 4C to the regular agenda.
Okay.
Any other? Call the question, Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty.
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea.
Yes.
Ms. Rogency.
Yes.
Mr. Kabasinski.
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
Next item is adoption of the agenda. So moved with discussion.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion, Ms. Moore.
Yes, thank you. First, I would like to add under council business as item 13C, discussion in regard to the Tony Baker ordinance, and add as item 13D, discussion regarding responsible contracting. And an update on, under council business as 13E, an update on a litigation update. And ordinance publication.
Any others?
And item, what was 4C will now be 14E.
Okay. Any other? Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty.
Yes.
Ms. Rogency.
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea.
Yes.
Mr. Kabasinski.
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
6A, which is calendar of pending matters, motion to receive and file.
Support.
Motion by Moore, support by Watts to receive and file. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next item is 6B, discussion in-ray resident neighborhood concerns. Mr. President.
Ms. Moore.
Yes, actually saw a post today on Facebook, and I had some contact with the resident about this. It was an issue of the resident went into the clerk's office to view the minutes of a meeting, and as you know, the clerk's office holds the minutes of all commissions and boards and council and all that. He was told that he would need to fill out a FOIA form, which is common at the police department. You fill out a FOIA form and they give you the report that you're asking for. I don't have a problem with that. The problem is the person went into the attorney's office with the FOIA and had to get it approved, and there wasn't an immediate, the documents weren't given immediately. So I think that maybe we should look at updating our FOIA policy, because there are certain things that, you know, we keep minutes of the meetings, and under the Open Meetings Act, we keep those because we have to be transparent with what we're doing. And so I think that that should be an automatic. If a resident comes to the window at the clerk's office and they want to see the minutes of a meeting, they should be given access. And if they're worried about them being taken away, make a copy or have someone from the staff stand there. But when somebody wants to see the meeting minutes, I think they should be allowed to do that. So maybe we can look at the FOIA policy and see if we can't come to an agreement to update that in some way. So I would ask that our attorney take a look at the current policy and see if we can't. You found it? Okay. Okay, and then maybe we can take a look at that, and you'll recommend any changes that need to be made to address some of these issues. Because there are just normal things that people get all the time that shouldn't have to be approved. There should be an automatic blanket approval for. Thank you.
Any additional?
Mr. President,
Mr. Watts.
I got a couple items. If communications could throw up the pictures that a couple of the pictures that I sent over would be great for Jewett Street. 11267 Jewett. I got a complaint about this last week, and I went over there and took a look at it, and I was just shocked at what I seen. I can't believe that anybody would have to put up with this in a neighborhood. Lots of junk, stuff laying around, cars parked on the lawn, trailer parked up next to the house or in front of the house on the grass, garbage cans were out. So if property maintenance could take a look at that, that'd be appreciated. The second thing I got, this would probably be for the police department. When I went to look at this, I discovered on Marmon Street, just north of Continental, there was an unlicensed, abandoned Ford pickup truck. It's been there so, it's no plates on it, it's been there so long, there's weeds growing up around it in the street. So if they could take a look at that. And then 22104 Panama, I got a call about this, and they sent over a picture as well. And somebody has maybe what I would say is a classic car or something, and they've got it parked right in the middle of the front lawn. So property maintenance or the appropriate department could take a look at that. That would be great. And last, and probably one of the more concerning ones, is I've received so many complaints, and I've said this many times at this council meeting, Sozo marijuana grow operation on Hoover, south of Stevens. The stench from that place is unbelievable. I've gotten a complaint from the neighborhood across the street. I got a complaint from the neighborhoods behind, and I can tell you, coming down Hoover, it is unbelievable. Now, I don't know how many times we have to tell the city building department or anybody to deal with this, but this needs to be dealt with. I would not want to live in that area, and those people living there shouldn't have to put up with this at all. Even businesses are complaining. So, you know, I even heard a rumor that we might have a marijuana person in the building department now, so maybe they could get out and take a look at this and get it taken care of once and for all. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Any additional? I got one. I received a message from a resident, and this is something I've heard, and the reason I want to bring this one up, I'm not going to talk about the specific address. I'll send it over to the mayor's office and the department to deal with, but in general, and I think, Mr. Watts, you probably heard this, and all of my colleagues have, when someone goes in to pull a permit, a resident goes in to pull a permit, or their contractor, the requirements for the permit change. And I don't know whether it's a communication issue between the department that issues the permit and the contractor or resident, whether they're giving them verbal instructions of what they need to gather, or if there is something in writing. However, I've gotten this complaint a lot, that it just appears that they're getting the runaround, and it doesn't make any sense. We need to be a little more customer friendly, a little more customer centric. And if you get to the point where they're having to reach out saying what is going on, then they're not communicating very well. And we want our residents to pull permits when they're doing a construction project, or in this case, a repair to water damage. And that in itself has just been a problem for years. And we can't expect residents or newer contractors to understand all the ins and outs of pulling a permit. And it should be upon us as the ones issuing it to do our best to communicate and to educate, and maybe, you know, have some flyer and checklist, and there's a lot easier ways to do this. So that's what I wanted to get out. I'll send this information on this issue, so the resident didn't want the address out in the public, but I'll send it over to the administration to deal with. Any others? All right, is there a motion to send this over to the administration?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next item is 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 20th, 2022. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next item is 8A, approval of the bills of the general revenue funds. So moved with discussion.
Support Rogan C.
Motion by Moore, support by Rogan-C. Discussion, Ms. Moore?
Thank you. There are two wire transfers on the list of bills, one for $17,947.36 to Kirk Huth in the DeVote case, and $19,459.57 in the Hooks case, again to Kirk and Huth, and for a total amount of $37,406.93.
Any others? Call the question, Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Rogan-C?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski? Yes. Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Green votes yes, item passed 7-0. Next item.
Next item is approval of the bills of the water and sewer system. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion? Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Ms. Rogan-C?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski? Yes. Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Green votes yes, item passed 7-0. Next item.
Audience.
Members of the audience who would like to discuss or address council this evening may do so under this portion. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. When there's 1 minute, I will let you know there's 1 minute, and then when you hit 3 minutes, I'll ask you to wrap up. First is Gracie Peslacqua. Should be a green light when when it's on there. You see the microphone in front of you, there's a base, and then right in the middle of the base there, press it so the green light comes on. Hang on 1 second. Thank you, Mr. Howard.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Perfect. Good evening. Well, we're in 2023. And the way I started my 2023 was horrifying. I was shocked and frantic, and I was also horrified as well. And it's the worst way you can start a new year. I had a knock on my door approximately 12:05 that night. We were already into 2023. It was my neighbor down the street. He pounded on my door so loud. I said, okay, what's up? What's going on? He pointed to me and said, the house next door to you is on fire. I got out of my house so fast, I grabbed my phone, and I was shouting for my neighbor. I mean, I was shouting, not Happy New Year, but I was shouting for my neighbor to get up, get out of there. But it didn't work, because she already had smoke inhalation in her lungs. And the lady had fallen on her dog, and the dog had died. So I was back and forth from her door wall to the front of the house, which I grabbed my phone and I called her niece. And I frantically told her, someone's got to get over here. Your auntie's house is on fire right now. So minutes later, the fire trucks came, and they were asking me a lot of questions, the best I could answer to my knowledge. So the ambulance got there and took her out at 12 and Hoover.
1 minute.
And approximately 30-ish, she passed away from smoke inhalation. I've known this beautiful woman, a godly woman, for 25 years, since 1997. A beautiful woman, a beautiful soul, loved everyone. And she was proud and loved her family and her church. God, I could go on. She was just a beautiful person. And now she's taken. But I want to say to the fire department and the ambulance that got there and put the fire out within minutes, that was absolutely great and fast work. At this point, I don't know what else I could say, but I'll always remember her from the day I moved in 1997, how sweet she was, and her husband was wonderful, and God, it's just a beautiful family she has, and she was just so lovable. And the house will not be the same with her gone. So that's how I started my 2023, in one of the worst ways, a fire and then death. Good night.
Paul Kerman. Thank you.
You said Paul Kerman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bought a house on 2160 Rome Avenue about 9 years ago, and it was pretty much the crappiest house on the block. Over the last 9 years, I've got it looking like about the best house on the block. A lot of hard work, a few friends helping me, and, you know, a little bit of money that I had. One of the things that kind of bothered me is a few years back, I was complaining about the tree across the street, because I got a lot of trees on my lot, and this pine tree had a disease, and it was dying, and it was going to, you know, spread that disease to my trees. I complained a couple times about it. Nothing was done. I saw when the guy that does the renter inspection came by, and I talked to him, and he said, told the first one that, hey, when are they going to do something with this tree? Didn't have any needles on the thing anymore. It's obviously dead. It's in the front yard. Well, I'll tell the owner. I said, yeah, but what about it, you know, diseasing my trees? Oh, well. Next inspector, I mentioned that too. He said, well, it's really not my problem. You should talk to the forestry department. And I thought, well, what the hell? It's on the rental house that you guys are overseeing. You know, if the windows are broken, a dead tree in the yard, I mean, that's part of your job, isn't it? To report it. It's part of the rental house. I don't understand how that works. So that was what got me started. And then I was looking back on you know, like the telecommunications. I've got a lot of done on my house, and I had to get permitting, and as you all know, that's a pain in the ass. Not so much getting the permitting, but the inspection. And that's because you have a cluster, you know what, of a phone system that you cannot get through. And when you do get through, you get put on hold. And then the whole system is just nuts. And the newer systems now, hell, they could sit down and schedule not only the day and time in, put it in a calendar form, set it so it'll text the owner and send them an email, and you don't have to do a damn thing. You don't have to have some poor girl sitting getting buried by phone calls. People got a call every morning after 9 o'clock a.m. to find out when the inspector's going to come by. You know how ridiculous that is? And then a year or so ago, I was looking at they were going to be getting a new phone system, and I had this experience in the past. And by the way, when it happened to me this last time was when they went down for 2 days. I said, what the hell's going on with the phones now? So that's when I said, okay, I got to come down here and talk to you guys because somebody's dropping a ball here. I understood that there was a phone system that was, I guess, applied for or looked at a year and a half ago maybe. What the hell happened to that? And why did the ball get dropped? What court was it in when somebody said, no, we're not going to do this? And what was the reasoning? Does anybody have an answer for that?
We don't address it during,
I'm sorry?
We don't address you during audience.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. And then the other thing was I was going to ask you was, I knew they were going to be doing the, what do you call it? The parks. They were updating the state parks, and we had some money available for it. That was just last year or so too, I think. And I was thinking, yeah, we need to. They're, you know, some of them need a little bit rough shape.
3 minutes.
Well, it got canceled, and I don't know why. Does anybody know why it was canceled? Okay.
No, sir.
All right. That's another one. And then the other thing I wanted to say was on the new town center. I thought that was supposed to be like paid for itself or something, and that got shot down. What was that all about? I mean, is there someplace I go and find out why it was shot down? Online anywhere? Because I looked and I couldn't find it.
I don't believe there is.
Okay. And then the last thing I just want to talk about is the water treatment plant right now that we have is up for some updates. And I was talking to Brian a little bit this last week. And just to let you know, my background is I have a bachelor's in water quality, a master's in environmental health, and I've basically was a operator, had my operator's license. I know a little bit about the wastewater treatment systems. And the program he's bringing up is really what we need to do. And it would really be state of the art for a lot of good reasons. I understood that the state, I think it was, he said, shot it down, or I should shot the grant down because of, they want it to be land applied? Is that correct? Okay. I'm going to talk to the state about that because that's BS. Because, again, I know it's in the water. You know, I don't know, maybe somebody doesn't realize there's heavy metals in that water and that heavy metals will bioaccumulate. Maybe they don't know what bioaccumulate means, but that's just not a good way of getting rid of our waste. But the new system that Brian is I looked into it, he's on the right path. That's what we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Kerman.
Okay? That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lori Harris.
Hello, I want to just point out first of all that when we're hearing the people at on the council speaking, there's only really one loud microphone, and that's Mr. Papandrea. So if communications could turn up the other microphones so we could hear you better in the back. I wanted to talk about, well, let's see. I want to say to the people that have run for office in the city of Warren in the past and who are going to be running in the future, where are you right now? What have you been doing for 3+ years? What have you been doing for the city? Have you been involved in fighting for the city? Involved in commission meetings? Or are you just a name on a ballot? So if you want our votes, you need to show that you're willing to work. In communications, I think that's under, I don't know where it is on the agenda, D, 14D maybe? The public address system for $85,000. Will that also be, I'd like you to ask them if that's also appropriate for theater productions, if this is something that will be useful in more than one way. And how many inspectors do we have right now in property management? I'm wondering why it takes calling about an issue or going up to City Hall and report an issue, and they take care of it and they never look again to see if it's still being complied with. I'm not sure why, if I can drive around the city and see cars parked on lawns and front lawns looking like trash, why can't the inspectors see that? Are we only doing?
1 minute.
Thank you. We're only going to take care of the things that get reported? Is that how this is working? Because that's not fair to the citizens. I've said that before. It makes the citizens the ones that have to keep reporting, and you get afraid to report. And if there's a marijuana guy in the building department, terrific. So let's get rid of these illegal pot grows in the houses in our neighborhoods. It's been 5 years that I've been trying to get rid of the house next to me. And I'm really tired of smelling pot. I don't like it. I don't like smelling it. I don't like having to question the people. I don't like being the bad person. The city needs to take care of this. And that's it. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Joe Rutherford.
21 inspectors.
Yeah.
They're all sleeping in their car.
Good evening, Council President Green, and good evening, Warren City Council. I'm probably kicking a dead horse with this, but I have to bring up redistricting. There was a meeting today from the supposed redistricting commission, and they actually voted to approve the map that City Council previously voted to approve before. So I'm trying to understand that process because, well, first of all, I don't understand the redistricting commission because it wasn't even the way the city charter says. There were no 2 residents that were appointed by the mayor and considered by council. But how in the world can a map already be done when they had their first meeting, and then this time they vote on it? But yet there was an agreement that was done with city council that 5 city council members voted for and approved, and the redistricting commission hadn't even voted on it. So I'm quite confused on where we stand with this. My biggest problem with it is, again, there was really no input from residents. I mean, there was one map that the redistricting commission showed that to me was much fairer as far as, for residents because of the way in which the districts were drawn. But there were no town halls, there were, nothing that was done to really get input from the residents. And that was what disappointed me, that city council voted to approve that map. I was really hoping that, you'd allow residents to have a say-so in the district setup and the way in which it's going to be done. And the redistricting commission didn't do it, which I know was run by the administration, but sadly neither did city council. So I'm sure probably at this point maybe nothing will change, but I at least want you to know that, because going forward, it's something that, we residents pay our taxes. And the one thing is we'd like to have a voice, especially when it comes to something that's only done every 10 years after a new census. So I think it's only fair that we have a say-so in how we're going to be represented. Thank you.
Thank you. George Demas.
Good evening, Patrick Green, Council President, Mindy Moore, Council Secretary, and members of City Council. I just have a few announcements to make tonight. The first announcements are reappointments. It is Richard Fox and Greg Palachek to the Police and Fire Retirement Board. To the Housing Commission, it's Deborah Ladensack. And then we have a new appointment to the Housing Commission. Her name is Charmaine Woods. That basically concludes my delivery. Good evening. Thank you.
Mr. Demas.
Mr. Demas?
Mr. Demas?
Could you spell Charmaine for me?
Charmaine is spelled capital C-H-A-R-M-A-I-N-E.
And that's Woods, W-O-O-D-S?
Pardon me?
Woods, W-O-O-D-S?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Howard?
I have to agree, good evening and a Happy New Year, by the way. I have to agree with Mr. Rutherford talking about kicking a dead horse. I went back and watched the city council meetings from when you guys first took office, and I really loved and believed you when you guys talked about transparency and accountability. But that has not been the case in regards to this redistricting process. When the city council set up its subcommittee for redistricting comprising of 3 members of this body, time and time again, we were promised transparency and public involvement, public engagement, that the residents of this city would have a say to that. And that frankly has not happened. Now I'm confused, as well as every other resident in this city that has a concern about redistricting. 2 maps were proposed. One, I believe, is equitable, and the other one is the one that you guys voted on last time. So what was the meeting today in City Hall about? Which one is the redistricting commission? If you guys approved a map, why are they meeting again to talk about a map and debate which one? And also, where was the public involvement? Where was the public involvement that we were promised by members of this body? Where was the public involvement that we were promised by the members of the administration? In regards to that, both bodies failed in regards of hearing out residents and actually meeting and talking about it. And so we're just confused. We don't know who to listen to, who to believe. The administration is saying one thing, the council is saying one thing, and it looks like y'all are saying something completely opposite and contradicting each other from meeting to meeting to meeting. So we would just like to know a clear explanation of what's going on, because we want to see equity in this city. We want to see equity and transparency. I believe I saw on one of the agendas, could have been this one or a future one, that we're looking at possibly repairing South Mound. I think Mound Road is a sterling example of the inequities in the city. If you do the math, the $217 million project that's spending to innovate Mound,
1 minute.
If you divide it by the 5 miles, it's $43 million per mile on average getting poured into the roads. But South Warren, what do we see? I mean, that's just another example of so many residents, whether it's Miss Lori Harris or Lori Arts or so many other residents that come up here and talk about the inequities in this city. but we don't see the needle moved at all. I would just like to see change in the city and make Warren equitable to represent all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel Vanderlyn.
Joel Vanderlyn, longtime Warren resident. I'm here to bring up a point that was brought up before in front of this microphone. Back in April 23rd, 2021, item 13E, Ms. Moore brought up the opium settlement contract that was agreed upon by Mr. Vincent, and which the city of Warren received $4 million. In that item, Ms. Moore brought forward that the council had no knowledge or information on that item whatsoever. Mr. Vincent came down here, all cocky, mouthy, lippy, being himself, told Ms. Moore if you didn't like it, to protest him, to have your boy do it, I think was the term he used. Well, I filed a FOIA. It was denied. I filed another FOIA. It was denied. I went to an attorney. That attorney filled out the FOIA for me. I signed my name to it. It was approved. I asked for all the information, especially the signature form in which Mr. Vincent illegally signed for this council without this council's permission and knowledge. I didn't get it. On January 8th, I went to a tribunal of this council consisting of Mr. Green, Mr. Watts, and Ms. Rogansey. At the end of the meeting, it was agreed upon that they had 10 days to give me that information. It's now been a month. I have not received this information from the law offices at City Hall. Why? Why is me, a citizen, being denied, the information on that Freedom of Information Act? Why am I not getting the stuff that should be publicly open for everybody, just like it was for Mrs. Moore? I feel like I'm being cheated. I feel like there's a crime being committed. Is it being shredded? Has it been deleted? Has it been taken away? Why is the law offices, led by Mr. Vincent, not being forthwith and honest to me and this council and the citizens of Warren? Because that form is evidence against him and the mayor that they purposely, with malice, tried to hide this information from this council. I call for an immediate investigation on why I haven't gotten this information, why they haven't sent me the information as a tribunal requested. Where is this information now? Has it been shredded, deleted, and gone? And call for an immediate investigation on this point. Being that Mr. Vincent committed a crime by signing a form he was not authorized to sign by this council, he should be immediately suspended. And this information should be gathered up and sent to the Attorney General's office immediately for his dismissal, loss of law license, and immediate charges brought up against him and Mr. Fouts.
We can wrap
Crime
it up,
has
please.
been committed. I want punishment done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item,
Next item, announcements. Mr. President,
Ms. Moore.
I am extremely excited and proud to congratulate Stephen M. Bida on his appointment as judge of the 37th District Court. Mr. Bida has had an illustrious career and brings to us an extensive background. Steve has most recently served as chief judge of the Michigan Tax Tribunal. Steve served the 25th District in the House of Representatives and the 9th District in the Michigan State Senate. Mr. Bida received his bachelor's and master's degrees from Wayne State University and his Juris Doctorate degree from University of Detroit Mercy School of Law. Steve practiced law with several law firms and was in the private practice of law for many years to this day. Steve also worked for the City of Warren as Director of Labor Relations. We welcome Mr. Beta and wish him much success in his new role. One other thing, love is in the air. I know you don't believe it while you see us some days, but it really is. Warren Symphony is holding a symphony performance on February 12th at the Macomb Center for the Performing Arts at 3 o'clock. That is Super Bowl Sunday, but the performance will be done by the time the game starts, so everybody can get home if that's what they wish. I will have this on the, I think I already have it on the City of Warren Council Office Facebook page if anybody is interested in attending. Their orchestra is just fabulous, and they have a very nice program plan. Thank you. That's it for me.
Any others?
Mr. President?
Mr. Watts.
I got an item here. We have a new sports training facility that recently opened on Chicago Road between Van Dyke and I believe that's Denton there, the old Variety Nut and Date building. It's called The Facility. Their focuses are on development of youth players from the ages of 8 to 18, and they specialize in softball and baseball, but they're currently able to host soccer, lacrosse, and flag football. Their goal is to be involved in the community and offer many other programs as well. So they're going to be planning a grand opening in the future. They're already open, but they're going to plan a grand opening to showcase the operation. So appreciate them reaching out, and nice to have a new business in the city. So if anybody's out there and wants to stop by, please stop and see them.
Any other announcements?
Mr. President?
Go ahead, Mr. Watts.
I just wanted to mention that in regards to what Gracie said about the fire on Moulin, that was the way they started off the year. We had another fire death the other day. The police department has had a couple of really big situations that they've made some good arrests on. So I just want to reach out and say many thanks to our police and fire department. We truly have the best servicing our residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Any additional?
Mr. President.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Mr. President, I have two.
Go ahead, sir.
Number one, another grand opening took place with another business on Van Dyke, Ex-Wives Chicken at 32187 Van Dyke. That's just south of the Menards on Van Dyke. They had their grand opening on Friday, the 5th of January, 2023. The first 500 customers were able to get a chicken tenders dinner absolutely free. So if you missed out, try to go and check them out. I went there. I guess I'm going to have to bring this up at another time, but we're still having issues, I think, in the countywide and citywide about these grand openings, where we're not getting notified, even at the county commission level and also at the council level, of all the grand openings that are happening in the city with all the businesses. And small business is going to drive the revitalization of the Tifa and DDA district. So it would be nice for the powers that be to please notify this council and also not notify the county commissioners so we can be there and celebrate the growth that's happening in the city of Warren with new business. The other item is yesterday, Monday, the 9th of January, 2023, was National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. As Mr. Watts just said a few minutes ago, our police officers are second to none in the state of Michigan, and they are busting people every day for crimes, and there's a lot of big events that have happened recently in which they've gotten a lot of serious offenders off the street. So if and when you see a police officer, please thank them for their service. They're human beings too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczynski. Any others? Next item.
Next item is a public hearing, 11A, consideration and adoption of a resolution approving the collection proceedings relating to the removal of a house and shed at 11324 Essex through the nuisance abatement program, SAR number 518. So moved.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak regarding this item? Hearing or seeing none, to close the public hearing and turn the item over to council for action.
So moved.
Motion by Moore, support by
Support.
Watts. Discussion. Call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
11B is a public hearing, fourth minor amendment to site plan for open storage of truck trailer parking located on the south side of Tank Avenue. Joseph Smith, Joseph Vaglica, Stag Industrial Holdings. Minor amendment is for a canopy used to store maintenance materials. Consideration and adoption of a resolution.
This is a public hearing. Is anyone in the audience who would like to speak regarding this item? Hearing or seeing none, I close the public hearing. Turn the item over to council for action.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Lafferty, support by Watts. Discussion. Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski? Yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
11C is a public hearing, proposed resolution and agreement granting industrial facilities tax exemption and agreement pursuant to Act 198 of 1974 as amended. Applicant Sonus Engineered Solutions, located at 5587 Stevens Road, Warren, Michigan, parcel ID number 1329227-032. Mr. President?
Yes.
Mr. Bomarito sent us some information.
Yes.
He can't be here today, so I think we all got an email on that.
Yes.
Yep.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak regarding this item? Are you the petitioners?
No, we're here representing the company to answer any questions.
Okay, so you're the petitioners. Okay. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this item? Hearing and seeing none, I close the public hearing. Turn the item over to council for action.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Moore, support by Watts. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Moore,
would you like to explain what you're doing?
tell us about the company and tell us the reasons for the application and how great it's going to be.
Sure, thank you very much. First of all, my name is Tim Draghi. I'm president and CEO of Sonus Engineered Solutions. We're doing a expansion. It's about another 95,000 square foot facility. We're an automotive supplier. We're currently located on the corner of 9 Mile and Sherwood, and the new expansion is just due to some new business that we've been fortunate enough to pick up from our OEM customers. So it's about a $7 million investment, $17 million investment with approximately 30 new jobs, and hopefully we'll be should have our certificate of occupancy March 1st.
That's great.
Perfect.
Any questions? How many employees do you have there now?
We're roughly 120. We've already started doing some hiring to get them trained for when the new facility opens.
That's like a 25% increase in the number. Okay, great.
Yep.
And a $17 million investment. That's awesome. Any additional? Call the question, Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for investing in our community.
Yes. Next item.
12A, request of Superior Ambulance to renew license to operate within the city of Warren. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Next item.
12B, request of Detroit Bud for a 60-day grow license extension. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll
Two.
call.
Roll call. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
No.
Mr. Kaczynski?
No.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 5-2. Next item.
Next item is 13A, Councilmember Jonathan Lafferty, discussion in-ray telephone services. So moved.
Support Lafferty with discussion.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion, Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you. I had published this item, or I'd asked Madam Secretary Moore to publish this item to the agenda so that we'd have adequate representation, notice to the administration, so that we could ask questions as to the status of the telephone system. For those of you who may not be aware, the telephone system in City Hall and all of the other 20 buildings within the City Hall footprint continues to fail. And this system did not become antiquated overnight. It didn't become antiquated during only this term of council. It was far into its legacy stages well before we took office. And this is not a new problem. Now, I was tempted to wear the same tie that I wore at the meeting a year ago, just to make a point that we talked about this 1 year ago. And I'll just review the timeline. June 30th, 2021, we passed a budget, and there was no mention of the need for a new telephone system, either by the IS department, the city controller's office, none whatsoever. It was not included in the budget. The city council budget remained unpublished. At the time of the request for funding that came in, it was part of our meeting packet, December 6, 2021. And rather, the letter was dated, sent to the council office. I stand corrected. And that there was no action taken because there was no budget. We could not take action without having a budget to work from. And so, pursuant to that, late in December 2021, there was an emergency purchase order issued by the mayor for $49,000 to Presidio, and that would be followed by a monthly increase of $1,300 with a 3-year total cost of $380,000 for a phone system. Now, to my knowledge, because I have no department heads to answer any questions about that, there has been no action by Presidio, and the IT department has not made any improvements, nor have we received any request for appropriation to fix a telephone system. Now, I do remember from the meeting of the 11th of January, this past year, 2022, Secretary Moore even mentioned, we will hold an emergency meeting. We'll call a special meeting. Send us the appropriation after you send us an approved budget. I bring it to every meeting. We have one, adopted by council. What are you waiting for? Send us the appropriation for the telephone system, and this body will approve it. I don't think there's one member up here that would say no. What are you waiting for? I have a theory. And as long as the telephone system continues to fail, without any action by the mayor, he has something to blame us about. That's all there is to it. So I'm issuing a challenge to the mayor tonight. Mr. Mayor, send over an appropriation, and I'll take back every word I said tonight about this. We have a resident, Mr. Kerman, that came up this evening, had questions. People are asking. They want to know why their phone calls won't go through to City Hall.
I'll call them and tell them that.
Please do. So I challenge the mayor once again, send us the appropriation, we will make the repairs. You have no excuse. We have a budget. So send the appropriation over. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Lafferty, was there an RFP committee for any of this?
No, there was no RFP. There was nothing requested of us at the time, and there was no budget for it.
Mr. President.
Mr. Watts.
So, I agree with everything my colleague said. However, we're getting smoke and mirrors coming from the administration. He's blaming it on the phone system, which they're talking they want to buy this Presidio situation, phone system. But on the other half of the coin, they're blaming the outage in the past couple times it's been out on our provider of service, which is Windstream. They're specifically stating Windstream. There's a big difference, folks, between the service provider and the hardware. Hardware is the Presidio, Windstream is a service provider. So if they want to get things straight, they need to be straight with this council, because I'm not voting for spending any money unless I know exactly what they're doing. And I'm smart enough to know the difference between those two providers. So the problem is not here, the problem is there. All they have to do is be straightforward, be honest, come here. If they need 200,000, 300,000 for phone system, great, let's buy a new phone system. I mean, I agree with you, sir. Need to answer the phone, need to talk to the residents. But when you keep fabricating the situation because you want to lay blame on somebody for your incompetence, this is not working. This is not working at all. We're going to do the right thing. I'm going to speak for myself, but I'm going to do the right thing with your money. I'm going to make sure it's spent the right way and it's approved in the proper format. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Any additional? Mr. Kabasinski.
Mr. President, the day that this occurred, I actually came here to City Hall. I had to talk to various people, Mr. Bomarito, also Ms. Gapshis and Ms. Seisberger, in reference to a business owner's question. When I found out about what was going on here, I actually went out and talked to the individuals who were trying to make repairs out in front. And the reason that I was given was that the last fiber optic cable had failed. It wasn't the actual telephones inside City Hall that failed. Evidently, they work fine. It's the fiber optic cable that is being used for the telephone service is what's failed. And evidently, that has to be replaced. Now, they had all the manhole covers here opened up on, I forget what drive it's called, street right before Van Dyke. And they were out there working, and they were stringing, I guess, new fiber optic cable underground so that they could get the phone system up and running. But my understanding is the phones inside the actual phone that they talk, the receiver, that's not the problem. It's actually the underground cable or the fiber optic cable that seems to be the issue at the moment. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional?
Mr. President?
Ms. Moore.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Kabasinski. That's totally contrary to what the mayor posted on Facebook and in a press release he sent out, blaming the city council for not approving the phone system. So thank you very much for clearing that up. I appreciate that.
Any additional? Is there a motion to receive and file? We have a motion by Moore, support by Lafferty.
Receive and file.
I believe that's a receive and file, is it?
Receive and file.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13B, Councilmember Mindy Moore, discussion in re the 2023 budget. Motion to
approve.
support. Mr. President?
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. I'm switching them. Ms. Moore.
Thank you. The 6th of January was the date that all the departments had to have their budgets in for this next coming budget year. And I would like this body to request, I don't know if we need to have an ordinance, but each department sends in their requests. And from there, the mayor makes a recommendation. In the past, the actual department recommendation amount would be in the budget, then the mayor would recommend, and then council would approve. And we would have a chance to discuss with the departments. You ask for, $10,000 for new chairs. The mayor proposed $5,000. Tell us why you need the additional $5,000. And we would go back and forth on those sort of items. Since we've been on council, I have to go back to the first year, but the department requests and the mayor's recommendation are exactly the same in every instance. And I can't imagine that is actually the case. And we've not been able to talk to department heads, certainly last year, so we've been in the dark about really what the departments need. We only have the mayor's interpretation of what the departments need, and that's really not enough information for us, because we learn at that time what's going on in the departments, what their problems are, what the future is, good things, bad things, and we were denied that certainly last year. So I would like that we request that that original submission to the mayor's office of each department's budget be maintained in its original form, either copied off. If you have to print it, I don't care, so that this council has a copy, so that because we don't know what's going to happen this year, if the mayor is going to forbid his department heads to show up at budget hearings, we don't know. But I would like to have that information so that we know what the people running those departments need and want, so that we have some basis to decide those items. So I don't know how we do that, if we just request that and that it not be altered. They were due last Friday.
Submit a FOIA on behalf of the council.
You can submit a FOIA, but as I understand, it's a living document that when I asked for that information last year, I was told it didn't exist because when the department comes in with their requests, that document is updated to show then what the mayor is approving. So I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe Mr. Knapp, I'm not going to put you on the spot with that at this point. If you, or okay. If you're
Evening, Mr. Knapp.
Good evening. I think in the 30-some years that I've been involved in budgets, it's actually pretty typical that the department requests and the mayor's budget end up being identical or very close to identical. And part of that is because the departments, they submit their budget in a vacuum. It's up to the controller's office and the mayor to put this together and match it with the resources that we have. So there's always a discussion between the department heads and the administration to come up with a final budget.
Well, I will tell you that in discussions previously, we've been told that they would ask for certain things and they were denied.
I understand that,
And
but
so, I mean, I will take the fire department for an example. They asked for an MIS director, I think it was, or training or something, and we added it because the fire department said they had requested it, the mayor turned it down, and we added it because we were persuaded by the fire commissioner's comments to us that we agreed that, you know, that they needed that position at the time. So if they're different, we want to see it.
Okay.
You know, what you're saying may be absolutely correct and there's no difference. In the past, I've seen a difference. Maybe this mayor is different and just gives everybody everything they want as compared to before. But I don't know. You know, I'm not in the middle of those discussions. I know that when council submitted our budget, the mayor's was wildly, wildly different than what we requested. So that's, you know, I can certainly go by that.
Okay.
So I don't know. So that's what I would request, that they be maintained in some form as they are turned in. I think the date was the 6th, correct? I think everybody had to have them in. And I would just request that they at least be held in their original form, their native form, so that if we are granted access to that through the FOIA process, that they have not been altered in any way. That would be my request. So it would be pretty much like a litigation hold or something, but.
Oh, and with regard to the previous item on the telephone system, I know that the people in IS have been working very hard trying to coordinate this with, you really have like 6 bureaucratic organizations that you're trying to get to work together to get this phone system settled. What I'd suggest, and I did talk to Mr. Fox about this, was that we schedule a committee of the whole and have the consultants that are involved in that meet with you to explain what's going on with it.
Sure, we can do that. I'll be glad to schedule that. You know, I'd like to know what the plan is and what it's going to cost, because I'm sure we're going to have to, I don't know, it's never been put in a budget before, so maybe it wasn't put in last year's budget.
No.
Even though the mayor said it was an emergency, he didn't ask for it in the budget. That's like 2 or 3 things that were an emergency that weren't asked for in the budget last year. That's why it's confusing to me, just like the issue that was talked about over at the wastewater treatment plant, the stack. Nobody ever mentioned one word about that. So, you know, we're just being surprised and blindsided by all these things. So I'll certainly set up a committee meeting if we want to discuss it. Thank you very much for your information.
Mr. President, I have a question for the gentleman, because he just brought up in some information. I think it needs to be questioned.
Let's stick to the,
Word budget,
We're on the
2023 budget.
Well, he just made reference to the phone system.
You're really talking about the 2024 budget, though?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I just have one question. Since you brought up there's 6 different bureaucratic systems that have to be dealt with. This is a telephone system. You pick up, you make a phone call, you hang it up.
You've got Verizon, you've got AT&T, you've got Comcast, you've got WOW. All these organizations are involved in coordinating this.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional?
Mr. Knapp, I call it the 23 budget. I know you're a year ahead, but it's 23, 24, right?
Right.
Okay.
Ms. Moore, anything else on your item?
No.
All right, there's a motion by Moore, support by Lafferty to have that information preserved and forwarded on to council. I'll call it Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty.
Yes.
Mr. Watts.
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy.
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski.
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea.
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
Next item is 13C, discussion regarding the Tony Baker ordinance. Mr. President, motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Motion support. Ms. Moore.
Thank you. Several items have been brought to my attention by Mr. Baker and things I've read. I believe that our ordinance needs to be, our ADA ordinance needs to be updated, and I would just ask that we send that to our legal counsel to take a look at that. I know Mr. Baker has some items he's forwarded to me. I'll forward those to Mr. Schroeder, but I want to make sure we have because there's seems to be some confusion about what we're supposed to be following. The Michigan Building Code, and I know the ANSI code is not mandatory, but people that are cutting edge and trying to do the right thing use the ANSI code because it's a little more comprehensive, and those are experts in those areas that work on certain subdivisions of items of interest. I've been working on a case involving that, so I've got a little information on that. So I would request that we send that to our legal counsel just to look at it and update the ordinance and make sure it's up to date.
Thank you. Any additional? Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty to send to legal counsel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13D, discussion in Ray responsible contracting. So moved.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion?
Mr. President?
Ms. Rogancy.
So, thank you. The responsible contracting ordinance was brought up about a year ago, passed by this body unanimously to send over to the administration to draft the ordinance. We had some version of it. Mr. Schroeder took it over, created a draft. Because so much of this contracting ordinance involves the purchasing department, what I'm asking this body to vote on tonight is to send it to the purchasing department and give them until the next meeting to send any feedback they might have ahead of a first reading so that we can ensure that anything that they have that might be crucial that we're not thinking of is incorporated into the ordinance before we have a first reading.
Sounds good.
And all of you have the draft in your inbox.
Yes. Thank you. Any additional? Motion to send it to the purchasing department for review and return by a specific date?
Next meeting.
Next meeting? Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Next item is 13E, litigation update and ordinance publication. Mr. President, motion to approve.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion, Ms. Moore?
Yeah, Mr. President, legal counsel would like to address
Mr.
this.
Schroeder.
Certainly, we had some activity in the courts since our last appearance here, one of which was a case that had some interesting findings by the Macomb County Circuit Court. One of which was that the court essentially found that ordinances adopted by this city council are valid ordinances, whether I drafted it as the special legal counsel or whether the city attorney drafted it or Mr. Papandrea could draft it, Ms. Moore could draft it. So the court is essentially holding that ordinances adopted by the council are valid and should be published. And there are right now 4 ordinances that have gone through 2 readings of the council and are being withheld and not being published.
Those are the ordinance creating a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. It also created a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Director. I would also note that there is an appropriation from this council to fund that commission and the director for the current budget year, not being utilized. In addition, we have an ordinance creating a Veterans Commission, which is also adopted on a second reading. There was an appropriation from this council for the Veterans Commission, including $25,000 for improvements directed at the Veterans Memorial Park. We have another ordinance limiting advertisement at public expense. In essence, it wouldn't completely limit advertising at public expense, but there would have to be a disclaimer on any television ad that you might see the mayor in or any elected official. If it's paid for at public expense, there needs to be a disclaimer so the viewers know that this is paid for by tax dollars. And advertisements in print and on the radio, so people understand what they're listening to is paid for with their tax dollars. That is being withheld. And finally, the ordinance dedicating EMS transport revenue to the fire department. So those are the 4 ordinances. And so the suggestion I'm making is that at this point, it's the clerk's duty to publish these ordinances, that we have the council office send a letter to the clerk's office with a copy of the court order and essentially respectfully request the clerk's office to publish these ordinances. Unfortunately, if the clerk doesn't do it, our only option is to go back to court. It's really unfortunate because, you know, this is really simple. These are ordinances that the council passed. This is the legislative body of the city. They should just be published. It's really our only option is to go to court. But I think that we should give an opportunity to the clerk to review this formally, and then hopefully the clerk does it, and we can move on, and these public policies that the council has adopted can get implemented. So that's one item. So I guess we would have a motion on that.
Mr. Schroeder,
yes.
If I could interject really quick, I believe, I don't know when I had it last, but in conversation with the city clerk, I was told that, well, I don't have it. It's sitting on the mayor's desk or sitting in the city attorney's desk. So when we're doing this motion, I don't care who has it. Someone's holding it up on purpose. Now, in my personal opinion, the clerk should be going over to the city attorney's office and getting the document and doing her job.
Well, my understanding is that the clerk has to certify the ordinance. The ordinance is sent from the city council to the clerk. The clerk would then certify the council action. If you look in your packet at every ordinance that the council passes, at the very end, there's a certification of the clerk, and the clerk certifies that this is the official action of the council. And I believe in all these cases, the clerk has actually certified these actions. They just have not been published in the newspaper. And according to state law and the charter, ordinances must be published before they're effective. It's not enough for the clerk to certify it and put it in the books and records at City Hall. It has to be published in the newspaper in order for it to take effect. That's the final step. And I understand what you're saying, and Council President Green, and you're correct. I've seen those communications where the clerk says it's sitting on the attorney's desk, but the attorney at City Hall is telling her not to publish it.
That's what I want to get on the record.
So I think if we respectfully request the clerk to take this action, attach the court order, and publish these 4 ordinances before the next meeting, then we can avoid court action, and that's my recommendation.
Discussion, Ms. Moore? Anything additional?
No, not on
I think that's fairly clear and direct.
Mr. President?
Yes, so this is a motion.
This is just one, okay. We just got to vote on this one, then there's more litigation.
So, Mr. President?
Mr. Watts, go ahead.
So you're including that it has to be published by the next meeting?
Correct.
Okay. Continue. Go ahead, Mr. Schroeder. We'll do the...
Sure.
You want to bifurcate and do each one, Ms. Moore?
Let's do the one for the, directing the clerk to publish these ordinances separately.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion by Moore, support by Lafferty to, you want to state it on the record for us, Mr. Schroeder, so we get it exact?
Yeah, so to respectfully request the clerk's office to publish the 4 ordinances that I mentioned, and by the next meeting, provide a copy of the most recent court order interpreting the charter and laws, and that the council ordinances should, are valid, regardless of who wrote it. They were adopted, and give the clerk an opportunity to publish these before the next meeting, in which case, you have no choice but to go to court and ask the court to compel publication.
Thank you. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Kaczynski?
No.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 6-1. Continuing on.
Okay, so on December the 29th, we did receive a published opinion from the Michigan Court of Appeals with respect to the city budget disputes that have been going on over the last few years. I believe this opinion has been distributed. If not, it's publicly available. A published opinion of the Court of Appeals means that it's an opinion that is binding. It's a court ruling that's binding on all courts in Michigan. And so this is something we're pleased with, because this is something I personally advised the council of when I first was brought on in 2020 in the first budget dispute, to basically pull apart the charter and say that the council, again, is the legislative body. The council passes ordinances, the council also adopts the budget. And the council, as a legislative act, adopts the budget every year. That's the council's job. The mayor proposes, the council adopts. It's just like the state. The governor proposes, the state House and Senate adopt the budget. Congress adopts the budget, the legislative body. So we had this dispute where the mayor felt that if he didn't like what council passed, that the mayor's budget would then become the city budget. And so the court gave us a very strong opinion interpreting the charter, consistent with hundreds of years of tradition in our society with democratic legislative bodies. The council budget is the city budget. So we're pleased with that. And the mayor does have 21 days to appeal to the Supreme Court. He does not have a right to an appeal. It has to be by leave of the court, meaning he has to ask the court permission to hear the case. So we will keep the council updated, but for now, we have a very strong published opinion and on the city budget.
Thank you. Any others that we're updating?
Mr. President?
Ms. Moore?
Yes. Mr. Van der Linden actually brought this item up, that was the opioid litigation.
Yes.
And I understand that, maybe you could clarify this for me, why Mr. Van der Linden was denied a copy of the authorization to settle from Mr. Vinson. Did they claim attorney product?
They claim that, if I recall correctly, and from my colleagues on the FOIA Appeals Committee, they claim that the document didn't exist, and there was no such document.
I have a copy of it.
So if that copy that we have in our email is subject to attorney-client privilege, I don't know.
That's what I don't know. I do have a copy.
But the only thing that happens since our, nobody, I mean, we all do things verbally in our businesses and agreement, but even if we do something verbally, we go back to whatever system is our internal system of our business, and we put down a note, an activity. I said this to so-and-so in this time, and here's confirmation, so we can remember what the heck we did, or someone else can come in and see how something was transacted. Something of this size and magnitude, no one's going to do verbally. There's going to be something in writing. And to state that there wasn't is, I don't know what word you want to use, ludicrous. But the city attorney's office called our council office and asked for a copy of the verbatim minutes, which I believe we were going to provide, and from that meeting, but that's the last we've heard from them.
Mr. President?
Ms. Moore.
So number one, I would request that we send over a request to the city attorney's office and ask them what privilege they are claiming for not turning this item over. I do have a copy of it. I was given a copy of all emails between. Go ahead, but I think.
Mr. Schroeder?
So if they said the document doesn't exist, they're making a declaratory statement the document doesn't exist. If the document exists and is subject to attorney-client privilege, they should have written in the FOIA response, this document exists, however, it's subject to the attorney-client privilege, which then lets the requester know such a document exists, and maybe they're improperly claiming a privilege. But if the contents of the communication are to state that the city of Warren is opting into a settlement, and underlying that was no council approval. I'm finding it very hard to believe that this would be an attorney-client communication. And at the end of the day, if that's what they claim, the council can waive it.
I do not feel comfortable just handing out the document, though, without discussion with the city attorney's office. I'm not going to do that because until we have a discussion about that. I'm very sensitive about attorney-client privilege.
Mr. Schroeder, would it be prudent for the FOIA Appeals Committee to have another meeting, ask that question, say we know the document exists, we have a copy of it, and then send correspondence back to the city attorney's office asking them to respond in a proper form?
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. So I think our council office will send an email to the members of the FOIA committee and ask for dates and times that we can meet.
Mr. President?
Ms. Rogancy.
Ms. Jones was just reminding me that I believe it was denied because it didn't exist under that specific name.
Under that specific name or anything that should have been known as yada, 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 but.
And I believe we supported the appeal. Therefore,
we did.
We should be able to give the document to.
It was pretty direct, and the language in FOIA allows, broad interpretation of what they're asking for. I don't have to ask for the letter written on a yellow piece of paper. It just has to be the letter. So, yeah.
The spirit.
It's very clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional? So we know what we're going to do on that.
Right.
Where are we? Litigation update still.
Are there any further litigation updates? Unless there's questions.
Any questions for Mr. Schroeder? Motion to receive and file the balance.
Oh, I do have a question.
Oh, please, go ahead.
One of the findings of the court was that that council members are not allowed to speak directly to any department head, only to the mayor. In fact, Mr. Kabazinski stated earlier, he talked to Ms. Captious and some other people, that's specifically barred by that court order. The mayor can't let some people talk and some. The court order says there's no communication, and he can't waive it for Mr. Kabazinski or Mr. Papandrea or anybody else. The order was clear. That's what the mayor asked for. So, isn't that right?
Mr. President.
I don't agree with it. I think that we can make contact if we're talking about ourselves, but nothing in the course of council, right? So if a neighbor calls me and says there's a water leak, I can't call the head of the water department. I have to call the mayor or email the mayor. But if it's my house, if somebody's breaking into my house, I can call the police or the ambulance. If there's a police issue next door, I'm calling police. Sorry. You can take me to charter jail or whatever, but.
Any additional?
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Mr. Kabazinski.
I'd like to answer that question. So this was per an email. The council offices have it documented on record because I carbon copy to the council offices the request to the mayor's administration in reference to this business owner's request. The mayor did approve for me to talk to Ms. Gapshis, to Ms. Seisberger about this, and also Mr. Bomarito, because the questions were related to the DDA TIFA meeting. So I did go through the mayor's office, and then I did get the permission to speak to those department heads related to the question that was at the DDA TIFA meeting that I had on behalf of the business owner. Thank you.
But that's not what the order says, right?
Well, I guess I'd like to clarify something here, because the charter, I thought, was pretty specific, that we can't direct department heads. If we have a question, why is our speech being limited? I mean, is that what the court said? We can't talk to them, or we can't direct them?
No, I'm going to have to put this in a memo form because it's really confusing in a way. I can lay out the issue a little bit. The charter says that unless the council's in the course of an investigation, it shall conduct its affairs through the mayor. Neither the council nor its committees shall deal directly with department heads, neither the council nor its committees. I told the court I believed that the charter was referring to the council as a body, as a whole, because this is council or committees. Committees is a body. But council members on their own have no power. I mean, I respect everyone here, but you don't have power on your own, like the mayor does, or the clerk. Council can only act as a body through its votes. And so an individual council member contacting a department head saying, you know, there's tall weeds and grass at this property, could you take a look at it? It's not really directing them and telling them what to do, it's just alerting them to a problem. The mayor viewed it as, you're directing people that work for me, so you got to go through me. So the court wrote the order saying city council business shall be conducted through the mayor. The court was very careful. The court did not find that any council member was in violation of the charter. There's no restraining order against speech. So essentially the court's saying city council business needs to be conducted through the mayor. And you know, this is something I think we need to discuss with further. I think I want to talk to the mayor's attorney about it as well, because I have about 10 hypothetical situations that I'm concerned about, and hopefully we can work that out. But this is one of those unfortunate quagmires we're in, and I would just encourage us to try to work through the mayor. If you're acting alone as a body, the council votes. It's just confusing to me. We have department heads coming up tonight, and they're dealing directly with the council. So it's just something we're going to have to try to work through.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
So here's the problem that I have. We're elected by the people to be their voice. But a resident can call that department head and get an answer or find out what's going on or give a problem. But us representing the people, we're not allowed to do that. We have to go through the mayor, which is a problem, which brings to, I'll bring another point out. I'm finding out that a lot of these neighborhood concerns are not being dealt with because the mayor's telling the departments, don't deal with that, let's make the residents call me so that the council is not getting any credit for what they're doing. I got a big problem with that. I don't want to go back and litigate it, but I'm almost at that point that I'm ready to say I'd like to litigate it because he is obstructing what the people elected us to do. And that's a big problem for me. So I'll let it go at this time. I'll wait for your memo. And
thank you, Mr. Watts.
Thank you.
Any additional? Concluding 14E on the balance, motion to receive and file by Moore and Lafferty.
13E.
13E, excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item.
14A, consideration and adoption of a resolution approving $22,950,000 Downtown Development Authority bonds, Series 2023. Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Moore, support by Watts. Discussion.
Mr. President.
Ms. Moore.
Just to remind everyone, this is to pay for our fire stations that we're very, very, very excited about. And the residents are very happy we're doing this. And we have deplorable conditions in our fire stations that we're going to get some new ones that this will be great. We're going to reposition things to make it better geographically for the department. So that's the background.
Questions? Mr. President.
Mr. Lafferty.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Axe or this gentleman.
Remind us your name again, sir. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. Stephen Burke, MFCI.
Thank you, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. So I see the debt retirement schedule is going out 20 years. So this is we're going to pay off $22,925,000 with certain interest rate. Do we have that interest rate?
Or we are.
So we don't have the final rate until we sell the bonds competitively. But if we sold them today, we'd be looking at around 3 3/4%, roughly.
Okay. So 2043, we got 20 years to pay this off, and those fire stations, based on the elevations that this council saw, should look pretty terrific even in 20 years based on the materials that they were going to use. I'm excited about this. I am in full support. Let's get the shovels in the ground.
Any additional?
Mr. President?
Ms. Moore.
One more comment. We did ask at the last meeting about what the city's, how much we could bond, and we can still bond for a lot more. So this is not taking up a lot of space in our bonding ability. So we were glad to hear that.
We're very pleased to have this in front of us finally and getting at least 2 of the fire stations rebuilt. I know myself, as well as Ms. Moore and my colleagues, we've been trying to get this done since 2007. Commissioner, is there any additional things you want in the fire stations? We talked about that statue in front.
He's not allowed to talk to you.
I know, you can't talk, but we had one of the commissioner holding an axe in full gear, and I still think we can do it.
Just a little fun. Well, now it's stretching it.
All right, sorry. There was a lot of meetings on that, so we're glad we're at this point. So I'll call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Kabazinski?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Next item.
14B, request for an increase in budgeted appropriations for council, clerk, and treasurer, a transfer of funds between line items to account for funding adjustments within several accounts in the amount of $5,862 for the balance of the 2023 fiscal year, consideration and adoption of a resolution. So moved with discussion.
Support Lafferty.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion, Ms. Moore?
Yes, just to tell everybody, we are buying chairs. That's what most of our request is for. Even though planning uses this, council is paying for it. So planning, they owe us.
We'll figure it out. Any additional? Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Mr. Kabazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
14C, request of the Communications Department for an increase in budgeted appropriations in the amount of $15,025 to cover the cost of the auditorium's public address system, consideration and adoption of a resolution. Motion to approve.
Support Lafferty with discussion.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion, Mr. Lafferty?
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Caton. This is the budget appropriation.
Yes, the next item's the
Yeah, I'm taking two for one.
hijacking item.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Good evening. Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit about this system? I know that this is a very popular topic. We get a lot of complaints about the current PA system in the auditorium.
Yes, we're just trying to do some upgrades. We have this auditorium here, and I personally would like to use it for the benefit of the community. And when you sit here and you're talking, the people in the back can't hear, and it's just poor quality. So with this investment, we can take out the old system, put in 12 new speakers throughout, so those people in the back can still hear, and we can tone it down because we get a lot of feedback. If you can hear me speaking now, it's an echo. So we're going to try to eliminate that and get better quality in here for our meetings. But not only that, we have recitals. I would love to have some symphonies in here, bring some nice things to the community, but we can't do it with a poor system.
All right. I was actually surprised by the appropriation. I thought it was reasonable. I was expecting $250,000, and so it looks like we're getting a fairly decent system. $85,000.
Yes.
I believe is what you're asking for from the bid. So I mean, this looks really good. Does that meet all of your needs for holistically meetings and the theater groups and all of the other capabilities that you're asking for?
Yes, for the most part. I will be back the next budget and try to do some more upgrades to just bring it to a very good level in here. But to the most part, yes, that would be it.
Okay. Is there any reason why we wouldn't just do it all at once while we've got the hood up?
Well, you have to do one at a time, and things are costly. Right now, if we're looking at surround sound and things of that nature, to take it up a little bit, that would be more costly, and we had only put into that line item 70,000, and that's why we're in a deficit at this point. So I don't want to push it too much. We'll get this in place and see at that point what else we might need.
Okay, so we can expect to see you at budget time with an additional appropriation request?
Yes, just a little.
Fair enough. All right. No further questions.
President?
Ms. Moore?
There is one issue that it's going to be the installation of the system is going to take more than 2 weeks, as I understand. So we have given, hopefully the equipment's here and that can be scheduled, but we've given the communication department a window of when it can be done in between council meetings, when we have 3 weeks, because there's nowhere for us to go. So hopefully that's going to all work out. I don't know what we'll do if it doesn't, but.
Any additional? Call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Mr. Kabazinski?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
14D, request of the Communications Department to award bid ITBW 0802 to furnish and install a public address PA system in the City of Warren Auditorium to Sound Planning Communications in the amount not to exceed $85,024.91, consideration and adoption of a resolution.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Lafferty, support by Moore. Discussion. Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Ms. Rogancy?
Yes.
Mr. Kabazinski?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
14E, which was...
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
14E, which was 4C on the consent agenda, consideration and adoption of a resolution to approve a cost-sharing agreement with the Macomb County Department of Roads for preliminary engineering services for the reconstruction of Mound Road from 8 Mile Road to I-696 in the amount of $112,984. So moved.
Support Lafferty with discussion.
Motion by Moore, support by Lafferty. Discussion. Mr. Lafferty?
Thank you. I had hoped that Ms. Gapshus would be here tonight to answer a question about this. My question is specifically around, is this part of Innovate Mound? Because I had a conversation this afternoon with the legislative liaison from Innovate Mound, and the Macomb County Roads Department and Innovate Mound Committee has no knowledge of this governmental cost-sharing agreement. So I was curious as to how these two projects are related and why Macomb County is unaware that we're doing this tonight. So are we initiating this? Is this at the request of the county? Was there a federal grant that was awarded to us and we are sending out matching funds? I have a number of questions, but I am not allowed to call Ms. Gapshus to ask her these questions. I could have done this yesterday afternoon and gotten these answers. So I am hopeful that I will receive an email with answers to each of these questions and be happy to pass it along to the council. Otherwise, I have no objections. This needs to be done. Thank you.
Mr. Lafferty, or Ms. Moore made the motion and you supported it. Are you asking to amend the motion on here to include a response back on whether this is including in Innovate Mound and not just a work with Macomb County Road Commission?
Yes, I believe that would be a very fair amendment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Moore, do you agree with that amendment?
Sure.
Any additional?
Mr. President.
Mr. Kabazinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier during audience, Mr. Howard brought this up about this program here. I have to agree with him. I have to agree with him completely on this here, and he made some valid points. This project here has been waited and waited and waited until the very end here, and now it's being considered to be done right here in smack dab in the middle of wintertime. There have been other construction projects that have come up before where the entire project had to be redone, either because the wrong mixture of asphalt or concrete or whatever have you. And once again, I agree with him. The south end comes last. Sterling Heights is already done. That area is completely done. The north end of Warren is completely done already. But now here we go again, where the south end is at the end here. And I have gotten a lot of calls from businesses up and down Mound. I've gotten a lot of calls from residents on both sides of Mound Road asking, when is this going to get done? Because the road is absolutely horrible. And between 8 Mile and 102 and 696, ever since the I-75 project was being done, that truck traffic has gone from 8 Mile up down Mound and then to 696 so that they could get back onto I-75 or to get onto 94, find some other way to get around the construction on I-75. So now Mound has been torn up, and it is torn up. Anybody can go and traverse between 696 and 8 Mile Road, and I agree with them. Why was it the last project to be done? And why is it being considered right now in the middle of wintertime to be done when probably the asphalt and the concrete's not going to cure properly? I understand there's going to be a study done and there's going to be grant funding, and then the county has the audacity to tell us, well, you got to pony up some of the money too. Well, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's a county road. And most of this here traffic that goes between 8 Mile and 696 is traffic that would normally have gone on I-75, but they had that construction project and traffic still had to get to these businesses and they used Mound Road. And I think it's absolutely unacceptable for the county to expect us to pony up the dollars here and make us suffer the consequences and make the south end have to wait last. I'm glad it's finally being done, but it shouldn't be done in the middle of winter time, and we should have not been the last to be considered. It should have been the first to be done because it would have alleviated a lot of congestion that was happening during the summer construction season. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kabzinski, this is not to rebuild the road. This is to design it. So there's nothing being done in the winter right now. The $100,000 is to do the engineering design. Once it gets to the point of that they are putting out to bid and getting costs back, then that'll come back to us in the form of a request for costs and shared services for major roads. So there isn't anything being done in the winter. This is just to go and do the design.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Papandrea.
I would hate to see this project delayed. Mr. Kabzinski makes some good points, but I would hate to see this project delayed. And I hope the questions that Mr. Lafferty has gets answered. But if it doesn't, is it Mr. Lafferty's intention that this project should be delayed?
Mr. President?
Mr. Lafferty.
Through the chair, no, absolutely not. I know that the answers will eventually come. Ms. Gapp just can't stay away for too long. She's going to bring another item to the table. I'm fairly confident in what this is for and how it will intertwine with Mound Road, but I do have some specific questions. I will get those answers eventually, but in no way do I want to see this delayed. This is a great step forward. Ever since Innovate Mound came to fruition, that was my first question. Ms. Rogensee was at the meeting when I first asked that, and the legislative committee was worried every single time I showed up because I always asked, what about phase 2? When will we finish Innovate Mound all the way to 8 Mile? So absolutely not. We cannot delay this project. There's no intent there to do that. I simply had some questions around the semantics of the wording of the resolution and why the county seemed to be unaware of it. Thank you.
Mr. Papandrea?
Thank you, Mr. Lafferty.
Mr. President?
Mr. President?
Ms. Moore?
I think since the day we took office and Innovate Mound was being discussed, we all expressed our displeasure on the fact that 8 to 11 was not being addressed because we've all driven that area, and we were not here for those initial discussions in the planning stage of Innovate Mound. So we weren't in a position to weigh in on those decisions, and I'm not sure that the 8 Mile to 11 is going to match the same technology that is being put in from 11 North.
Correct.
I think it's going to be a slimmed down version of reconstruction, but we'll just have to see what they come up with. That's really, really inexpensive engineering drawings. So I'm not sure what they're planning to do for $100,000. That's pretty cheap. But we'll see what they have.
Mr. President, what I was simply trying to address is that there is a significant economic disparagement between those that live north of 696 in Warren, going out to Sterling Heights, going out to Shelby Township in Utica, versus those that live south of 696, okay, and driving into North Warren, driving north into Sterling Heights to go to work, or those going into Detroit from Warren into Detroit. There is a big disparagement of income, and those individuals that have tires blown out, they have to deal with, their undercarriage getting torn up by the road. It's absolutely horrible. I mean, there are massive craters that develop on that roadway. I don't see the county out there patching, and when they do patch, it doesn't last too long. This has been an ongoing problem, and the individuals that just simply cannot afford it are the ones that suffer the consequences, because they end up having to pay for a lot of car repairs that they can't pay, and they've got to go to work. They've got to be able to go. When GM was still open, they still had to go to work to GM. They've got to go to Stellantis. They've got to be able to go to places to go to work. And the best way to do that is to go 696 or 8 Mile, but they've got to traverse that there, because there was construction going on Van Dyke, on Ryan, on DeQuinder, and the best way to do it was to take Mound Road. It's the quickest and easiest link between 8 Mile and Mound, and and I agree with Mr. Howard. He makes a very, very valid point that this here was, in my opinion, it was done wrong. They should have done 8 Mile to 696 first, and it wasn't. And that's my only point. And I'm glad it's finally getting done. I'm not trying to hold it up. I'm just criticizing the county because the way they went about this was totally wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's the county commissioner for that, for 8 Mile, or Mound from 8 Mile to 696? Maybe we should send a copy of this to her. Any additional?
Mr. President?
Ms. Rogansey.
What, does anyone remember the cost per mile to do that?
Rule of thumb.
I know it's a lot. But
Rule of thumb for road construction is $1.1 million per lane mile. So if you have 6 lanes, 6 miles, 36 million.
I think this is more too.
I know this is.
This is more because it's got a lot
somewhere
more
between
involved.
30 and 50 million is what.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the Innovate Mound has different funding models, has different grant opportunities, and I don't know what this is going to fit into, but it has to get done.
Yeah.
No one disputes that whatsoever. Okay, call the question. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Lafferty?
Yes.
Mr. Kabazinski?
Yes.
Ms. Rogansey?
Yes.
Mr. Papandrea?
Yes.
Mr. Watts?
Yes.
Green votes yes. Item passed 7-0. Next item.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I got a motion. Is there support? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?